Today at Olds Mob 455, we're taking a departure from the cars, and we were given this Harley Davidson from 1957. It's a ST-165, some people call it a Hummer. And it had a seat on it that made it more practical for a bigger person to sit on it, but it was ugly. And they called it a buddy seat, and it had these brackets that were bolted underneath here, and then it kind of hung over the top of the gas tank, and it hung back here, and like a grown-up could ride this bike. But we don't like the look of it. So I told them I had my parts bin, you know, back in the day when we made choppers and shit. It's just called a solo seat. Now we're going to make brackets that are somewhat like this. We're going to go with a solo. And normally there was a bracket that went through these two bolts holes on the frame, and it was like a C shape. And you had a pivot. This would go up and down, and there were big springs on here. And the thing was somewhat up in the air here like this. Now the bike is small enough already, and my buddy here is like 6'5", I think, and there's no way he's going to be able to ride this thing. So if you put the seat even lower, it's just going to be solid mount, you're going to feel every bump. But tons of guys had choppers that were hardtails, and they had the frames mounted right, you know, king queen seat right down on the frame. You're not going to drive it that far. So here's a design flaw. If anybody's ever had a chopper or whatever, and they've got a seat that's got a bolt going up through it, or this has a fender going up through it, why didn't they just make some tabs right here, and you'd be bolting your fender here, and then you'd have like a bicycle bolting down here. The guy that had it before had the, you know, fender chopped off. Easy. I mean, when you're putting this thing together and you got a chain around the sprocket, then you're trying to get the brake stay arm engaged, you know, it's like a fork, so that stays still. If you didn't have it in there and you hit the brake, that thing would be swinging around. So you got to line that up, get the chain tensioners up in there. It's a whole lot of messing around, and you're going to have one guy up there, you know, holding this thing up to get the wheel up inside this fender. The longer the fender, the more of a hassle. You're not being able to come back, you know, putting it in from this way. So a lot of times you don't know the history of this stuff. And it's got these red grips. We wish they were black, but I think they're stock because this company that Harley Davidson used to buy their small bikes from was an Italian company. You got to realize after World War II, Italy was bombed, Germany was bombed. The engine is a DKW, and a lot of the other parts are from a company called Armaci. So these were all gummed up, and we're cleaning it. It says made in Italy right on the grip. So I think these are original.
Bravado patented, made in Italy.
Some guys with choppers like to have everything all hidden, and they're going back to this old setup. So you don't have any cables showing. It's all through the handlebar. And he ordered a ignition switch that goes into this gas tank right here. This was chrome, so we had to knock all the chrome off. We're just going to keep trying to clean it up and knock dents and stuff so that this can be a rolling chassis. We were thinking of, if we could just get this thing going as a roller, we would have sold it the way it is, because he's not into motorcycles. He wants to work on his cars. And this is taking up a lot of real estate right now. But since the Kickstart wouldn't even come back to even be able to kick it and check for spark, I says, let's just take the side cover off and see. I thought it would be a broken spring. Sometimes if you have a broken spring on a recoil, it usually breaks at the end. You just heat it up, bend another roll on the end, usually goes on a pin, or you see how this one just goes in a slot. We take the cover off, that's not the problem. This is just so small compared to working on a Harley, where everything, you know, a clutch basket is this big and a compensator sprocket is up in front. This doesn't even have a compensator, it's just a direct drive a chain sprocket off the crankshaft, which goes off around here and ties the crank to the clutch basket. But in order to start it, here's a kicker. It's on a spline shaft. When you're cranking this motor over, then this gear will make contact with this hub. Hit the Kickstarter and it would work once and it would stay down on the ground. Then if you left it sit for a little while, all of a sudden the Kickstarter would be back up and you could get another. Well, when we're trying to check for spark, we just left it in gear and we were rolling the motor over. So when we were doing this, the kickstart would work once, then it wouldn't work. It would work once, then it wouldn't work. So I'm thinking something's going on behind here. And that's why we had to take this all apart. When we took it apart, we realized this thing's been sitting a long time. The gear oil that was in here, it's like sap. This is some of it that leaked out. And this is like 90 weight gear lube that got even thicker. So what's happening is this device is supposed to go in and connect. It's still gummed up. We got to clean this. But it's so gummed up in there, it should be like a starter on a Bendix on an electric start going, ving, Well, we need to loosen this all up in here because it's so gummed up. When we were taking it apart, we knew about reverse threads on these. And everybody I talked to says most likely the clutch basket is always lefty. It's reverse thread. So you saw how I was turning that on. If you were trying to put it on regularly, righty-tighty, it won't. But if I go the opposite direction, that's tightening. And this one is regular. This is righty-tighty.
So when we took this apart, no gear oil really drained out of it. And I kind of theorized that maybe it was empty and was run like that and it caramelized
from heat?
The residual stuff in there.
Okay.
But I don't know. Who knows?
Because it's got plenty of compression. Tons of compression. So we're just going to clean it up so all these parts will move freely. Take the clutch plates, probably soak them in lacquer thinner and get them steels, rough them up with some sandpaper, and we'll have a good clutch.
So what's happening is you kick it sometimes and it wouldn't go in, and other times it would and it would catch. There's like serrations in the back of that gear.
We can show it to them after we got it all cleaned up too.
You can just see how gummed up that is.
And you can see an oil hole. I'm wiping off this stuff to get most of it off and it'll clean quicker, but it's just like sap. It's hard, but the mineral spirits will loosen it up. By the time we get this all cleaned up, it'll back to being shiny aluminum.
I'm soaking this thing. He's wiping that off because we don't want to contaminate our fluid.
It'll just turn black as fast as possible if I put this thing in here.
Yeah, you can already see it's changing colors just from agitating this. But this whole transmission is probably gummed up, and we do not want to split the case on this.
We're going to take the stator off. You should always check the stator, make sure it's working, because there's nothing worse than having a bike that doesn't charge the battery. And these two screws come off. I thought we were going to need a puller, but it just slid off. And you'll see how black it is. Now, this is just like an electric motor. It's got brushes that have to, one brush is springy, one's stuck. So this is sprung loaded. If you ever work on a motor, this one's stuck. So it's just gummed up, and when you put these back on, you got to have some way of holding this, back as you put it on so you don't crash it against here.
This piece is nice and free now.
Should look real nice after we get all this crap off of it, and it looks like it's brand new, really. And whoever gets it isn't working with a dirty, gummy, grungy thing like we're doing. All the crap work is out of the way, and they'll be getting a fresh vehicle. If they want to go further with it and restore it, to perfection, then they're not working with a piece of junk. And as we started loosening this stuff up with solvent, I go, let's just fill the tranny up with mineral spirits. And I'm turning the shaft, and I go, hey, it's freeing up. And then we're turning it, and then we're shifting it, and it started shifting easier. We flushed it out, and all this dark, this sappy oil was coming out. We put fresher solvent back in it, and all of a sudden you could shift it really easy, and the shaft spun really easy. So that's as far as we're gonna go. So what you're looking at is the insides that are cleaned out now, and this freely moves. There's an O-ring right here, but this was all gummed up and hardly moved. This used to be like real slow, and now you can just spin it. So it's pretty freed up. The kicker shaft has splines that you push this on, and then there's this thing to keep the spring in alignment. Then there's this wavy washer, like a spring, and then there's this thrust washer, so you're not carving into the aluminum. And you gotta put this all together at the same time. Get over that O-ring. But you can imagine how gummed up this thing was if you'd be kicking it and it stayed. It stayed. I mean, this got a lot of spring on it. So that's how gummy that stuff was, and it kept it, it stayed there. That's a lot of tension on that spring. You don't want to start this thing bone dry, so we're going to put some assembly lube in here so it stays. And we're just going to put it
We're gonna have to run this and change the gear lube a couple times on startup.
This didn't even turn before, you'd have to, you could get it to turn, but now she spins freely. So when you put this thing back together, you got to slide the sprocket and the clutch basket on at the same time, and then there's 15 ball bearings that sit up there, and then this thing is going to slide over that. But it's kind of hard to hold ball bearings in place, and you got to use a blob of Vaseline. The reason the whole thing started coming apart was the kicker. And now you can see how this returns each time. So all this has to be lubed up, put the gasket on, put the cover back on, then we'll paint it.